for the first time in the history of the world, you have this true global currency, and that doesn't have to go through the government. I think Elizabeth Warren and, whether it's some of the elites in DC, they weaponized Gary Gensler. We saw what happened in the 2008 financial crisis. In 30 years, that could happen with Bitcoin and different crypto assets. Elizabeth Warren is scrambling. She sent out multiple emails highlighting that she has a challenger coming in and asking for donations.
Yep.
And then she tweeted it, trying to paint John as a MAGA Republican, like he's some sort of extremist or something. And I smell fear, man.
When Lambo, I'm such a degen.
Welcome to Degenny from the blockchain, where we DeFi logic. And in this episode, we have the host of the Thinking Crypto podcast, Tony Edward, with us. He joins us to talk about the latest in crypto and to share a little bit about himself. Tony, welcome to the show.
Drew, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and to chat with you.
Great, me too. The reason I reached out to you to do this is because you bring so much content and interviews to the space. A lot of people look to you for the latest and what's going on in crypto. And I just wanted to spin that around now to you to get to know a little more about you. So first off, when I got into crypto, it was January 2021. And I asked a friend, what 5 channels should I watch to get up to speed with crypto as I entered the space? And you were one of them.
Wow.
And 3 years later, you're the only one of those 5 that I still watch.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah, you bring a lot of great information, man. So, everybody has a story about how they got into crypto, and I just want to know what yours is.
Sure. So a buddy of mine told me about crypto back in 2016. I remember we were at Buffalo Wild Wings, of all places. Friday night, me and my friends hanging out, having a beer, eating some wings. And he's like, check out this thing, Bitcoin and Ethereum. He's showing us his portfolio. And of course, my first reaction was, dude, what is this? Like, what are you telling me about here? Right? Whatever. And then, I brushed it off. But then I noticed he was making money eventually. And I'm like, dude, how did you pay for these? He's like, crypto. Remember that stuff I was showing you? I was like, okay, all right, now you have my attention. So then I started researching it on my own and going down the rabbit hole. And I've always been into technology. I was always into computers and the internet. In the 90s, I was taking apart computers. And my background is actually in digital marketing. So I've been doing things on the web for a long time. And I have an affinity to technology. So when I went down the rabbit hole and I saw what blockchain was and the different capabilities and the disruption and what the potential could be for it, my mind was blown and I was hooked. And I started spending time learning about it, listening to podcasts, watching videos, reading books. And I'm neck deep in crypto because I see it as that next layer on top of the internet. And just like the internet had tons of potential, right? And look at where we're at now. We are having a conversation over Zoom, right? You couldn't imagine that entirely in the 90s when it was dial up and clunky and you kick somebody off the line when you tried to go on the internet, right? It was nowhere near, the ability that it is now. And I feel crypto is on its path to becoming mainstream. And the technology, while some parts of it may be clunky, it's going to get better. So that's how I got into it. And I've been here for multiple bull market and bear market cycles, made money. And of course, I have the podcast and I'm passionate about it. I see this being the future in addition to other technologies, but it's going to be so integrated into the economy, into how we do business, how we trust each other, the global economy, which is already set up, but this is going to fast track it to another level where I can transact with someone in China if I wanted to, and I don't need a middleman. And with smart contracts and all these things, it's amazing.
Yeah, how do you explain that to mainstream people or family members or those who simply just don't understand it, but they're listening and watching the headlines that they see on CNBC or something? How do you explain that to them in a way that people can understand this is just the next layer of the internet? Like we had the internet itself, sharing information became different. And then social media, the way you kind of interact with people now became different. And now we have finances and security and real world assets and much other things that are coming down the line. So how do you explain this to people where they can understand that?
Yeah, great question. And I've actually pondered on this for years because I've often get asked by friends and family, hey, what is this? And I try to come up with, kind of a spiel or a quick bulleted list of things of how to break it down in layman's terms and not be too technical and say, hey, this is the blockchain and here are nodes and and all these things, right? Because they're like, what? What are you talking about? So I try to explain it in a way that, like you said, think of the internet, right? Right now, we're able to send text messages, communicate with each other. We can go to websites. Well, what if money can move on the internet where it's instantaneous? And then I try to explain to them, when banks send money and money transfer companies like Western Union sends money, you and I see the money in our bank account or our wallet, but it's actually not settled instantaneously because the system is not set up where it settles instantly because they didn't have blockchain before, but now that's there where it can settle right away. And there's no delays, there's no confusion, there's no, did you get the money yet? What happened? Kind of the old ways of things happening. So I tried to explain the payments aspect of it. And then I tried to explain kind of how people participate in social networks like Facebook and Twitter. Well, think of it as you're participating in a financial network and it's all online, just like you go on Facebook. But the difference is you can benefit in the participation of a network. So let's say you hold Bitcoin, you're joining the Bitcoin blockchain financial network. And as that token value increases, you're a participant. You can also run a node if you want. You can mine it if you want. So you can participate in different ways. And the other aspect is I encourage them to ignore the headlines and spend at least 10 hours researching this. And I tell everybody, and sometimes they're taken back, like, what? I'm like, look, this is another great opportunity, just like the internet. Did you wish you owned Google stock in the early days or Amazon? Well, here's your another opportunity, and it's much easier. You don't have to be accredited. You don't have to be part of a hedge fund. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it may be. And you should look past the headlines of, oh, it's used for this and it's used for that, and go research, take 10 hours and research how the blockchain works. And I found that has worked in certain cases. Some people still don't get it, which is fine. I don't think it's possible for everybody to get these things right. Not everyone is tech savvy. And unfortunately, some people are lazy, right? That's the hard part of it sometimes because they want the rewards and the benefits, but they don't want to put into work. And sometimes that means skipping a Netflix show. And that's how I did it. And my wife at some point was like, dude, what are you doing? You're like studying this stuff nonstop. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to learn it. But it means like maybe you don't watch that TV show for a week, right? Think about the amount of time people spend with that. And I tell them, go research this. And I'll point them to different resources and I'll send them videos by Andreas Antonopoulos, who's a great educator around Bitcoin. He's one of the first guys I studied or watched his videos. So that's kind of my approach, and it has worked, and sometimes it hasn't, where people are just like, oh, I don't know. Their heads are still spinning, but it is what it is.
Right. I mean, it'll come to everybody as in the most natural way possible, really. It'll be crypto grows organically, you see with a lot of the projects, with community and everything. And eventually it'll just become so big that people will come on board. It can't be ignored.
Exactly. And I think sometimes, and once again, in pondering these things and thinking about them, um, not everyone benefited from the wealth that was created in the dot-com boom. Even if they had capital and maybe they were accredited, not everyone participated because you have the human element. And I know this is kind of, getting a bit philosophical, but the human element is change is hard and be skeptical of changes. And we are often in our comfort zone, right? So if I've been familiar with stocks and doing things a certain way and investing a certain way, and then this technology comes in, which is very disruptive, very, very disruptive. Um, it's hard for me to accept that. And then if I am not a out of the box thinker and I just read headlines and what's in the news, I'm gonna go with that narrative, right? And that mindset. But if I'm like, what is this stuff? Let me go take some time to research if this is legit or not. Not a lot of, not a lot of people do that. But those who do, often can benefit from this significantly because then they have more education around it, and they can position themselves if they choose to, from an investment standpoint.
Yeah. And it is about education because before crypto, I really never paid attention to the Federal Reserve and,
Yeah.
these meetings like 10 times a year and what happens with rate hikes and cuts and all this. And crypto actually did that for me. It got me deep into the systems of the financial institutions and the markets and everything. So maybe that could be for other people as well. But shifting a little bit here, mentioning education, you do a great job with all the interviews you get on your podcast. You have a lot of politicians and people like CEOs of major projects in crypto on your channel. What made you start to reach out to interview these types of people and get this education out? How did that become a big driving force to you?
Yeah. It's kind of going back to what you were talking about, that crypto opened up your understanding about financial markets and how money works and how the economy works. Man, I crypto opened up the same thing for me. I had an epiphany on what the hell is actually happening in the economy. Before, once again, I would read headlines and, you see something on the news, you listen to Jim Cramer, which I know now not to do. Right? And now I understand how money works, what's going on in the fiat system and why the debt is what it is, and how they're struggling to maintain that because the debt is getting so high. And this is why Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, many which are hard cap, are a stark contrast to that. And then as I started learning more about that, I wanted to speak to the different people in different facets of the industry. So whether you're a politician trying to work on legislation, you're a regulator at the SEC or CFTC, and you're trying to navigate the waters to figure out how to help regulate this and how to build the proper rules and guidelines, right? And find that balance. And then the founders and the innovators and the CEOs, talking to those folks, because you get to their perspective, what they're trying to build, and you see the different use cases and problems they're looking to solve. And then fourth or fifth, the hedge funds and the investment firms, right? Why are these VCs, many who have invested in Web 2 and Web 1, why are they choosing to invest in this? So part of it is the education for myself and to bring that education to the community. And two, because I'm so passionate about this technology, I'm trying to build my network of folks I know. And so it's a bit selfish on that standpoint, but it's dual benefits where I get the education, I'm bringing that to people, but also I get to build my network and connect with these people. And if I look to expand my horizons as an entrepreneur, um, I can call up some folks, shoot an email, hey, I'm looking to do this. Can I get funding? Or can you connect me with this person? Or whatever it may be, right? And I'm always searching for knowledge. So even if I'm talking to a politician or whatever, I want to get their perspective, right? I believe in being open-minded and listening to different point of views. As in the world we live today, people are very siloed, and whether it's their politics or whatever it may be, they have tunnel vision. It's like, no, you got to listen to everybody because you can follow a certain party or person, and because we're all human beings, we have weaknesses and faults and so forth. You can't follow somebody like you're worshiping a god or something, right? They will fail. And from time to time, different political parties fail and people fail and companies fail. So you have to be open-minded, and maybe sometimes you have to pivot and go in a different direction. So I try to listen to everybody and see what they're doing, what makes logical sense, and update my strategy accordingly.
And you would do this yourself, even if you weren't having a channel. So we thank you for having that channel and sharing it with us because it is great information. And you mentioned, a network of people that you can go to. Like you have Tom Emmer in your back pocket, Cynthia Lummis. Like you've spoken to these people at length, and it's great that they're fighting for us in the crypto space in Washington. But then there's also people like I love how you say scumbag regulator Gary Gensler. Um, and like Elizabeth Warren, like how is there such a juxtaposition in Washington on clearly the next wave of technology that can send us forward, as a humankind into the future? Why is there such opposition in Washington?
Yeah, great question. And this is something I've thought about as well. And speaking to different folks, I realize it's multifaceted, the answer to that. One, in general, you have this extremely disruptive technology. And I remember I was interviewing one of the co-founders of Tether, and he said for the first time in history, outside of governments and kings and rulers, anyone can create a token and move value and essentially move it like a currency, right? You and I and a million other people can agree that we like this blockchain. And the example will be Bitcoin, and we believe in it, and we're going to accept it, and we're going to transact in it. Now, it has to have certain principles, right? Where you have the verifiability, immutable, borderless, and all that, right? So we can agree that those principles are part of it. But we can agree upon that and transact with it. And it doesn't have to go through the government. And it doesn't have to get the Fed's approval or the Treasury's approval, which they've had control of the money, and that's part of how they control population and the economy. So for the first time in the history of the world, you have this true global currency. I know some people are going to say, hey, what about gold? Yeah, but gold is not real time. I can't verify it. I don't know how much is being mined in some country in Africa or in another a part of the planet, right? And I don't know the actual supply because it's continual mining. And you have the Byzantine generals, all these principles, right, which Bitcoin and other blockchains solve. So for the first time, you have that, and it doesn't need to go through the government. So right away, it's so disruptive. This is why we've seen the knee-jerk reaction, all the pushback. However, we've seen historically any disruptive new technology is going to win, whether it was the combustion engine, the automobile, the electricity and light bulb. The people who are getting disrupted didn't like it. Same thing is happening here. And then the other part is, and this is my thesis, because when you step back and look at the lay of the land, Wall Street is here. They're not getting Wells notices. They got their Bitcoin ETF approved. Many are launching crypto trading, yet the crypto startups, Coinbase, Kraken, you name it, all the ones, Ripple and so forth, the Grayscale getting roadblocked. They're the ones getting the hammer, right?
Yep.
They're the ones
Slap
getting
on
the
the
beat
wrist.
down.
Mhm.
How can these two things coexist? My thesis is I think Elizabeth Warren and whether it's some of the elites in DC, they've weaponized Gary Gensler to go after the startups, slow them down, or try to kill them. Not kill crypto or kill blockchain. I think it's just to kill the startups, which are whether they're exchanges, their wallet services, so that everything can go to the incumbents.
Right.
And I don't think that's a far-fetched, outlandish idea or thought, because we've seen it historically. The incumbents are going to fight. They do campaign donations. They have the revolving door, right? Some Goldman Sachs guy like Gary Gensler goes to work for the SEC, leaves the SEC, goes back to Wall Street. We've seen this story. It exists in other industries. So I think it's that layer. Slow it down, put it in financial products that we can track it like an ETF wrapper. So this is why I think the Bitcoin ETF is a double-edged sword.
Yep. Yep. And I was just going to mention that, like, is it good or bad that we have BlackRock and Fidelity and others, Franklin Templeton, like in Bitcoin with this ETF, and how quickly they are able to accumulate so much Bitcoin. Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy, took a few years to get to where he is now. So how quickly they can accumulate, is this something that is not going to be good in the long run?
And this is where I have mixed emotions, which I'm sure many people do, because it's good for mainstream adoption and brand awareness and bringing more people into the asset class. However, they are eliminating the sovereignty and self-custody aspect of it. And what they're going to do is mark it up and charge people extra and do all kinds of financial products. And, my worry is that we saw what happened in the 2008 financial crisis, how they took mortgages and real estate and what they did to that, right? just leverage and toxic mix of nonsense, and then boom, epic collapse. In 30 years, that could happen with Bitcoin and different crypto assets. They just keep piling on a ton of leverage and all kinds of stuff. So that's a concern. Two, um, it'll eliminate, like I said, that the core principles of like Bitcoin and the ability to be your own bank, so to speak. And people will not pay attention. They'll just know, oh, I can get some Bitcoin from BlackRock or Fidelity, and that will be the end of it. They don't actually understand how the blockchain works. They don't actually understand what problem, why it was created, and why it exists, because of what took place in 2008 and the continued abuse of fiat currencies. So it's a double-edged sword.
Well, speaking of the abuse of fiat currencies, I mean, $34 trillion in debt, that number is, it's not even worth thinking about. It's so big. It's just crazy. How did we get here? These people in Washington, is it all about puppeteering by like the nameless people that we don't know about? That this is happening in Washington? Like, how do such smart people put us in this situation? $34 trillion in debt. And could they actually flip on Bitcoin and say Bitcoin can get us out of this debt in a way and sort of be the heroes, if you will, in the mainstream?
Yeah, great question. And this is a big one, right? Because I have a daughter, she's 6 years old, and I'm concerned about what world she's going to live in. And will the United States still be, have the same standard of living and the opportunities that I experienced, my parents and so forth, and other people from past generations? Because this debt situation is getting pretty crazy. And we've seen historically every great empire has its great run, and then unfortunately it collapses. I'm not hoping for the United States to collapse. I hope it doesn't. Now, the good thing the United States has going for it, and why I think they have been so loose with the money printing and the debt, is because it's the world reserve currency. But we see that's being challenged right now by other countries. So we're in a situation where the entire world, the fiat currency system, is accumulating massive debt. Are we going to see some sort of massive debt collapse? And what will that look like for the world? Or, to your point, will they introduce Bitcoin as a solution? It becomes like gold, like central banks are holding gold. They've been accumulating tons of gold. I think that's possible as the world becomes more digital. And I think smaller countries are going to do it first, like El Salvador and so forth. And then I think the big players are going to jump in because with the internet and with the ability to transact in different currencies now, it just opens up a bigger problem for the United States as a world reserve currency. So they're going to have to capitulate eventually, along with the IMF and so forth. So I think that is on the table. The other thing I'm concerned about is they're going to introduce CBDCs, and that's going to be a way for them to eliminate some of the debt, because they're going to have programmable money. Use it by X or it expires. Or, hey, we see there's too much liquidity in this facet of the market or this asset class. Cut it off. And they can do that just like that. Right now, it's not as easy, right?
Right.
But if everything's on digital CBDCs, programmable money, I've seen people from the World Economic Forum and these different people talk about that, having an expiration date on the money, because they want you to use it to stimulate the economy and the markets, because they're running out of tools, right? And this is why, part of why they've been printing. When they came off the gold standard, it was just like, print as much as you want, make it a debt-based system, credit upon credit upon credit. And unfortunately, that cycle has kind of run its course. When they're now scrambling, what are we going to do? And they just keep kicking the can down the road.
Right.
So on one hand, I understand the problems the Fed and these people have, but the other part of it is many of them don't want to address the solution, the hard solution to fix it. They just keep kicking the can down the road.
Right.
So,
because
boy,
it goes against everything that they have, implemented over the course of their careers. It goes against all that. It'd be totally contradictory to them. Yeah, no, it's just wild to think about. But yeah, CBDCs can be a good thing, but
Right.
We pretty much don't trust the people who would be issuing that.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not the technology
Right.
itself, it's the people behind it who
Oh,
pull the
really?
lever.
Tell that to Elizabeth Warren, by the way.
Well, that's, she wants a CBDC. Of course, she won't
Right.
use the same argument for the CBDC. She'll
Right.
paint it in a good light because she's buddies with, the Treasury and the Fed. And once again, part of it is the narrative that they honestly don't know what to do. They're running out of options to stimulate the economy. And with all the debt and all these things that are happening, it's out of control because part of the GDP is the stock market value, which we see now the stock market value is inflated. You have zombie companies and it's going off of global liquidity where this is all data. You line it up, you see global liquidity, M2 money supply going up, assets go up, right? It's the whole inflation thing and all that. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I think the CBDCs, I think they're banking on the CBDCs to try to solve this.
Wow. Well, we have less than 10 minutes left, so I'll switch gears here. You were at the XRP party, which celebrated the years-long, victory kind of in the judgment summary in the Ripple versus SEC case, where XRP is not a security at its core. Since that moment, we see a lot of people turning on XRP in the crypto space. They're selling off. They're saying it doesn't move. Why? Personally, for me, XRP was a huge moment because the utility of crypto was vindicated, right? So why is everybody turning now on XRP? Why is the sentiment shift seemingly?
So there's multiple facets to this, right? And I don't think they're related. One, with the XRP situation and Ripple lawsuit, that, like you said, a huge victory, not only for XRP, for the entire market. The asset itself is intrinsically not a security. And it goes back to the Howey test. It wasn't the oranges, right? It wasn't the orange tree. It was how Howey packaged it. So it had nothing to do with the oranges or the plants. And this same thing is happening here. So that was one aspect. Great for Ripple, great for XRP, great for the crypto industry. The other aspect, which has nothing to do with that lawsuit, is just your typical market sentiment and market cycles. I think there is some bear market blues still lingering because last cycle with that lawsuit, XRP did not rally at all because it got cut off, delisted from exchanges. So people are a bit burnt out. I think that's an aspect to it. The other, and to be fully transparent, I think Ripple and even members of the XRP community didn't facilitate more development of apps and things on the blockchain, on the XRP ledger. You look at the developer activity, there are tons of other blockchains that have more developer activity, and there's more things being built and more activity from users. So those things have shown a high correlation to the price and attraction to, it's kind of the flywheel effect. More users come, more developers come as they see more activity. So I think Ripple dropped the ball there, or the XRP Labs Foundation, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's a part of it. And people are like, wait, what's going on? These other blockchains are getting more adoption, more builders. And I think so it's multifaceted, I think.
Yeah. And speaking of XRP, we had John Deaton be a champion, in the legal side for XRP. And now there's rumblings that he could run against Elizabeth Warren for the Massachusetts Senate. How big is this? Does he have a chance? And what would the implications be if he actually did dethrone Elizabeth Warren, or just looking into the future, have more pro-crypto people in Washington?
So I don't know if you saw, Drew, Elizabeth Warren is scrambling. She sent out multiple emails highlighting that she has a challenger coming in and asking for donations.
Yep.
And then she tweeted it, trying to paint John as a MAGA Republican, like he's some sort of extremist or something. And I smell fear, man. I smell fear. I think she knows John is a fighter, and he's got the entire crypto community backing him, regardless of what token or which side you're on. If you hate Ripple or you hate expert people, I saw last night, Jesse Powell, co-founder of Kraken Exchange, said he donated to Max. He's supporting John, and there's a ton of people just backing John. So you have all of crypto who hates Elizabeth Warren because she's clearly painted herself as the anti-crypto army leader. So she's worried about that because a lot of crypto people are ready to vote and they recognize, it's very clear who the enemy is. It's not like, oh, I don't know, maybe Elizabeth Warren is a nice person. I don't know. Right. No, they know the enemy is Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
So there's a clear drawn line there. Two, John's going to get money from those crypto PACs. And
Right.
they've been loading up tons of campaign donation money, which has been going to members of Congress and so forth. So he's going to get capital. And the macro, which I've been talking about, once again, I'm not trying to say Democrats, Republicans there, but unfortunately, the Biden administration is not in a good spot right now. Border, inflation, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So whether you're a Democrat or not, you got to admit people are not happy that the numbers don't paint the right picture here for the Democrats. So she's facing those headwinds, and then you got a community who's ready to fight her. So I think she's worrying. Now, is it going to be a tough task to take her down? Hell yeah. She's got a war chest. She got the name and notoriety, and she can pivot on different issues. Like she's used abortion and so forth and different things to say, oh, see, these guys want to do this and bring in a whole bunch of voters. But I think John stands a good chance, given what's happening in the macro with Democrats.
We're rooting for him. And real quickly, we're talking about 2024 and how this might play out in many different ways. And now there's an Ethereum Spot ETF that could be passed in May. I've heard people say that it could get delayed maybe into 2025. And then the theory is that that would actually be the peak of this whole cycle, which would make sense if we're talking about sell the news events, like, people showing up on SNL and saying Doge or, things like that. Like that Ethereum Spot ETF after a Bitcoin one within a year, that would be huge. And we're seeing earlier endings maybe, or at least double peaks in these cycles recently. So are we going to see an Ethereum Spot ETF, and would that mark the top?
That's a great question, and that's a great perspective. I think there's a high probability of that playing out. I don't know. I'm 50-50 as to what Gensler is going to do. I could see him continue to push back because Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin, is a very unique token because they're staking. And then it opens up the door for all the other altcoins. So I think Gary Gensler, he has publicly said in the past, before the Bitcoin ETF was approved, it's not a security, it's a commodity, blah, blah, blah. That was clear. Ethereum, he has not echoed the statements of Bill Hinman and Jay Clayton. Patrick McHenry said, "Sir, is Ethereum a security?" And he's like, "Oh, I can't talk about any unique asset, blah, blah, blah."
Oh.
He could have just said, "No, it's not a security," based on what prior SEC chair and these people have said. So he might push back there, and he may not care that he loses in court again because he's already losing a ton of cases, and he's just gonna die on that hill, right? But maybe he surprises. Maybe the Biden administration is like, okay, we need to get votes because we don't want to lose. Maybe he approves it, and then it kind of flips the narrative a bit. But it could play out like you said. It's coming in 2025 when we see the blow off top.
Right. Yep. So we just always have to be ready, have your bullish and bearish, cases and your timeframes and your strategy. That's always what we preach, even though it's not financial advice and everybody should do their own research. So lastly, this is your third full crypto cycle, I believe. For all the viewers, and I want to thank you for your time, Tony. What's your final takeaway or your number one takeaway being in crypto since 2016 that you can share with everybody?
Sure. So I would say do your research and understand the technology, because if you don't understand it, you're just going by, oh, this guy said this token is going to 10x or this thing is going to happen. Like you're going off of emotions, you're going off of just hearsay, and you're not understanding the technology for yourself. Once you understand what's happening, then you can look at different projects and tokens and say, okay, what are they trying to solve? And then, what's the supply and tokenomics and so forth, and actually do a non-emotional review of that, right? Because with investing comes emotions, right? Bearish and bullish and greediness and so forth. So you have to keep your emotions at the door and do your research, understand the technology, and that'll set you up, for success. Because I've been on the road of, oh, I just saw a post on Reddit. Somebody said this token's going to 10x, and this guy said this on Twitter, right? Be careful with that. There's a lot of people just tweeting nonsense. It's not backed by data. Many of them are just hyping tokens, and usually what comes with that is pump and dumps and rug pulls and so forth.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, I feel like I got initiated in 2021 and when I got wrecked, and I just don't want that to happen to anybody else too. So that's why do your own research. And it's great to have people like you out there that are bringing education to everybody. Where can people find your podcast?
Sure. So on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, just Thinking Crypto, you can search for it there. And it's pretty much on every platform, all podcast platforms, and of course, YouTube.
Tony, before I let you go, we've seen FET rip recently with all of AI. What do you think of the AI sector for 2024?
In December 2022, I talked about the narratives I thought would do well in the upcoming bull market cycle, and AI was one of those, in addition to the ETFs and so forth. So I think AI tokens overall are going to do well. I took a major bet on Fetch.ai, which is a FET token and Render, and both are doing really good. I don't always get the biggest winners, or I'm not always right, but those are working out well for me. Did take some profits on them, and I'm going to continue to hold some of my bags for the new all-time highs in 2025. But they're doing well, and I think there's a strong narrative around AI in the macro, in the tech industry overall, and with crypto. I think it's trickling down to crypto, and I think AI stocks are probably going to do well. Anything attached to AI, and it's incredible what OpenAI is doing with Sora and all these great, new inventions coming along. It's scary, but it's also fascinating at the same time.
Again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. What can you tell us about the next weeks and months on Thinking Crypto? Who you got coming on the show?
Sure. So I will have possibly next week Congressman Wiley Nickel, who collaborated with Mike Flood, Congressman Mike Flood, Senator Cynthia Lummis, on pushing back on the SEC's SAB 121 bulletin, which got pushed back from the Government Accountability Office. And I may also have Congressman Richie Torres, who's been a big champion for crypto, and he's a Democrat. So I think he's an important voice. He's young, he's smart, it's from the Democrat side, because we are seeing bipartisan support for crypto. And then I'll have a variety of founders and CEOs on, and trying to get more projects on board so people can learn about them. So I'm pretty booked, and then I have a book launch coming in April. So everybody stay tuned for that. More details to come on that.
That is amazing. Congratulations for that. Looking forward to it. Wow. Good stuff coming up from you, Tony. And again, thank you. Make sure to check out Tony Thinking Crypto podcast, link in the description below. And there's nothing more I would love to see than John Deaton, Richie Torres, and Tony Edward sitting in Congress advocating for crypto.
That would be amazing. Thank you, Drew. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching to the very end. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, drop a comment, and share the video. Follow me on X at Degenny Crypto, and please enjoy the next episode or my suggestion to the left.